All right, what's going on, you guys? This is Mike or Geekermon. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. So the final shape has dropped, and it has now landed as one of the greatest expansions in Destiny 2 history. But what about PvP? That's why you're here. That's why you're watching this video. We're going to talk about it today. As somebody who's been around Destiny for about 10 years now, I have a pretty good picture of the journey that PvP has been on. And today, we're going to talk about the truth behind why Bungie has kind of let the Crucible just go. So when Destiny 2 first launched back in 2014, PvP was not a major player in the game. I mean, you could hop in, play some quick play, try out some new exotics, but in all honesty, it was a relatively small part of the game. There was so much to explore in Destiny. There weren't really any competitive game modes. There's really just a wild variety. I mean, there was one where it was giant maps and you could ride vehicles, a ground war style. But as Destiny 1 evolved, people started playing more and more PvP. And this led up to the House of Wolves, which that expansion brought Trials of Osiris, which was an absolute game changer in Destiny. I'll be honest with you guys, I had never played anything like it. It was one of the most rewarding, most satisfying gaming experiences of all time. And Trials of Osiris honestly popped PvP to a new level. And so naturally, the player population absolutely skyrocketed. And to their credit, Bungie had created something with Trials of Osiris that had never been done before. That's such a statement. I'm sure it had been done before, but it was done extremely well. I was actually in college at the time, but my buddies and I would stay up all night playing Trials. D1 Trials just hit different, and the only thing that mattered was going flawless. And so in House of Wolves, it became a very large chunk of the game. I mean, honestly, more than it ever had been before. What am I playing against right now? Raid boss energy. And so honestly, at that time, it became a really large chunk of Destiny 2. The weekly reset of Trials of Osiris was hard, it was rewarding, the loot was incredible, the potential for exotics, which were so rare at the time. I don't know, it was just a great game mode. And so naturally, that paired with the feel of the sandbox at the time, which was a bit ability heavy, but overall super fun. The maps in D1 were chaotic, everybody was going for 4-down, lights out style clips. Skill-based matchmaking hadn't quite taken over, so hitting clips were possible. So there was an entire community that formed on Twitter around hitting clips. I remember some of the first things I saw were the Sir Demetrius montages from like 2015. A lot of those videos inspired me to create my own montages, but there were also a couple of external factors at the time that you have to consider as well. One, Call of Duty was kind of down then. When Destiny was popping off, it was a rut for Call of Duty, which means a lot of those gamers would come over and check out Destiny. And at the time, you could play a couple hours, grind a little bit, and then you'd be ready to hold your own in PvP. So it was easy barrier to entry, easy to come in, have fun. And that's really where the heart of my channel started to take off. And that carried all the way through Rise of Iron. So that was probably 2014 to 2016. And then in 2017, Destiny 2 Vanilla launched. There were a couple of decisions made by Bungie at the time that they walked back. They weren't the right decisions, but I understand why they made them based on the atmosphere at the time. So in 2017, the esports community really started to take off. I mean, it had been growing a little bit before then, but it popped off in 2016 and 2017. And part of the play that Bungie made was to look at games like Counter-Strike, to look at some of the Call of Duty competitive stuff. And the thought there was, how do we mold our arena-style shooter, space shooter, into an esports style game where we could have tournaments? Halo, of course, they've done it before, they can do it again. And so Bungie molded the sandbox for a purely competitive, even, balanced style of play. And so honestly, if you're Bungie, if you're looking at the market in 2017, this feels like the right play. It feels like the right move. But unfortunately, what Bungie did not consider is the fact that a majority of the PvP players in Destiny 2 were not competitive players. That's not to say they weren't good players, but they weren't esports players. Destiny was not designed to be an esports game. And so what happened is, in the sake of balance, in the name of balance, Bungie gutted a lot of what made Destiny 1 fun. Oh my gosh, reloading! And so when everyone landed in Destiny 2, they were like, yeah, it's fair, it's competitive, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not enjoying it. And beyond the gunplay, really the biggest hindrance was the movement. Destiny 2 at the time felt sluggish. It felt slow. It felt like, you know, the sprinting and diving and all the stuff that you could do in Destiny 1 was all gone. We moved at like walking pace, like a Counter-Strike pace. And again, coming back to the sandbox, it made sense, right? Like that's the only way to make it fair. You don't want hunters being able to do do XYZ, and Titans can't match it with the movement. But with a game so heavily based around the uniqueness of each class and the loot that you acquire, balancing that in PvP really hurt not only the Destiny 2 sandbox, but also PvE. They balanced the game to where it just did not feel like a space magic shooter anymore. You were slow and sluggish, and literally every subclass felt the same. I'm like a raid boss with these abilities, man. And so in D2, Bungie attempted to bring Trials of Osiris back, but again, same problem. People were not enjoying it. They also changed it to Trials of the Nine, so it was no longer Trials of Osiris. And so unfortunately, they kind of gutted their flagship with Trials when it comes to the Crucible fan base. Rework of Trials, the sandbox, going into D2, things were just bad. My YouTube videos started doing much worse because people weren't playing PvP anymore. They weren't enjoying it. And at the time, that's all my content was PvP. So things were grim. Honestly, things were bad. But Destiny 2 realized, all right, we're not going to be an esports style shooter. It's just not going to happen. And so if you're not going to go competitive and you're not going to go balanced, what do you do instead? And so naturally, the answer to that question is to go fun. And so Bungie did that. They did the Go Fast update, they called it. They started adding more chaotic weapons into the game that were not balanced and were just fun to use. Oh boy. Oh, got two. And things started to look up. Things started to be promising. You saw montages making a return, people starting to post clips again. Destiny started to become extremely fun going into a prime time for the PvP world, the Forsaken expansion. Some of my fondest Destiny 2 memories have to be during the Forsaken expansion. I mean, I had friends that had never played Destiny that hopped in for the first time and absolutely loved playing PvP. There was a grind for Not Forgotten and competitive. What? He's still alive? Are you still living? And so the game had its issues, but it also had a lot of things going right. It had a lot of things going for it. I am not doing a good job of playing and talking at the same time. This is an absolute struggle right now. Okay, teammate. Team shots! And so yeah, Forsaken kind of elevated it. The montages came back. People were enjoying. Trials started to make its way back towards old Trials over time. Sentiment was high. And after that, honestly, Destiny has just kind of coasted. There hasn't been that many major changes to the Crucible. But the downside is that Bungie has shifted away from trying to focus on making the Crucible competitive. And so when the priorities shifted away, that means that the developer resources shifted away. So the amount of love that the Crucible was getting started to shift away. There was promises of eventually we're going to get new maps, we're going to get new sandboxes. I remember through Shadowkeep and through Beyond Light, there were no new maps. 2020 Beyond Light, they added 0 maps to the game. Matter of fact, they actually took maps away for the Destiny content vault. And so if you're the PvP, you've got some of the best gunplay of all time. You're really enjoying the sandbox, and it's overrun by a few outliers that are overpowered and a neglect from the development studio. And so you're thinking, okay, what's going on here? But when budget moves away, resources move away, and at the time Bungie shifts to this seasonal model where, you know, you buy the game, you buy the season pass. Eververse in Destiny 2 really starts to pick up, especially with the exotic weapon ornaments, exotic armor ornaments. The shift away from the Crucible combined with the fact that Bungie realized there's money elsewhere. In the PvE side of the game, we're really going to lean in towards WoW with build crafting, and we're going to add dungeons. And we've got Eververse making us all kinds of money. And Festival of the Lost, and people are buying candy and masks, and we're making money. They didn't have to focus on PvP. And so while the player base was still there and pretty flatlined, I would say not a lot of people were leaving. They were enjoying the basics of it. There wasn't a lot of development resources being pulled into it. And since 2020, it's been a back burner game mode. We know that. I've complained about it on Twitter for years. There's times where they'll add a new map, like these new small maps that they added, where you're super excited about it, but you're like, man, a Europa map would have been good to have that back in 2020. Why didn't we get that? And it's because if you're Bungie as a company, you focus where the profitability is. And once they moved away from the esports scene, the profitability was just not there. And so it makes sense. You're not going to pour money into something like Gambit if you're not making money back out of Gambit. Unfortunately, some of the times where PvP was promised to be a priority and we're going to hit it hard and we're going to see what we can do, it was met with headwinds just across the industry. I mean, there were times where there's nothing that could be done because people were getting laid off across the board. Who's going to even work on it? We've got the skeleton crew keeping the game alive. And so naturally, it just faded into the background, faded into the backburn. The other issue that Bungie faces is the more fun that they make PvE and the more that they elevate PvE, the harder to balance PvP things become. And so nerfs to one usually impact the other. They're trying to balance essentially two games, and a lot of times it resulted in one of the two audiences being upset. You would take a great weapon in PvE, and because it's overpowered and no one's enjoying it in PvP, you'd nerf it, and then people wouldn't use it in PvE. And in PvE, you want to use almost everything. You want a wide variety of things that you can do. That's what makes the build crafting and the space magic fun. So taking away from the fun makes the game more competitive. And so you can see the internal struggle where I think eventually Bungie said, just forget it, let them have fun, let them enjoy PvP, but we are not going to try to balance that. We're not going to try to take care of that. We just don't have the resources, the time, and it's not profitable, guys. Let's focus on what our next season is. What kind of cool armors are we going to sell? What kind of cool weapon ornaments are we going to sell? No one's building maps. It was years before new maps came out, and when we did, there was like one new map, and you were like, great, this map's terrible. And so all of that has led us to where we are today, which is the final shape. There was almost no Crucible stuff in the promotional material for the final shape, and naturally, why would there be? It's not a large part of the game anymore. It's a back burner game mode. And for me, at this point, it's okay. I've accepted it. I'm enjoying PvE, especially in the final shape, more than I ever have. And who knows, maybe with Marathon or maybe in the future, Bungie will make a competitive Crucible style game mode again. But until then, honestly, I'm gonna hop in, grind for the loot, use the weapons I want to use in PvP, maybe make some videos for you guys. But the rest of the time, focus on Destiny, the game as a whole. There's a lot to explore. PvP is not the only thing on there, despite what you may believe from the years on my channel. And I feel like if I was Bungie, I probably, in hindsight, would have done things differently, but I also understand how they've landed where they are. What do you think? What do you think about the current state of PvP? What do you play the most? Do you enjoy the Crucible still? Was there a time when you enjoyed the Crucible? Would love to chat with you guys in the comment section, so make sure and leave me a comment down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, found it helpful. I don't know if it answered some questions or laid out a little bit of the history. As somebody who's been there, I've seen some things, wanted to share them with you guys. So if you're new, welcome. We post final shape content here on the channel. Check out our Discord if you're looking for a community to join. Don't forget, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.